Welcome back to Music Kingdom. In this video we are listening to, giving a music theory breakdown for, and reviewing Creepin by Metro Boomin from his most recent album, Heroes and Villains. Hang tight. Hey music lovers, my name is Francis. If you'd like to support the work I put into these videos, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support the channel even further, you'll find Music Kingdom's Patreon and other affiliate links in the description below. Alright, now before we give the song a listen, let's briefly talk Creepin by Metro Boomin. So as mentioned, Heroes and Villains is Metro Boomin's second studio album. He is a record producer. The album Heroes and Villains came out on December 2nd of 2022, which at the time of the making of this video was just a few days ago. The album itself has quite a bit of star power on it. I can understand why it's really getting a lot of buzz, which I find really cool because I like when producers do this, like David Foster of the 70s and 80s and 90s, or Quincy Jones, putting out albums where they produce it, right? But it's just full of collaborations with today's current stars. Now, atop all of the hype and buzz that this album is receiving is the song Creepin. At this point in my videos, I will usually read off the one or two or maybe three songwriters or producers that the track has. However, in this case, this song specifically, Creepin, has like a whole list of writers, and yes, while Metro Boomin did produce this album and it is largely him, there's also a whole list of producers for the track as well. And in my opinion, partially the reason for that is, in case you didn't know, that this song is basically a cover. And I can't really say that it's sampling, because usually if you're sampling some kind of hook or chorus or verse or something from the past, it's used in a way where it's kind of part of the song, but in this case, it is essentially what I would call a remix or a cover of the original from 2004. That song being Mario Winans' I Don't Wanna Know. And if you have heard that original song, maybe you'll share my similar opinions that it basically is the same song, just kind of covered by the Weeknd, and then they threw in a rap verse and kind of threw in a trap beat. And is why, in my opinion, the songwriters are basically everyone who was involved in the original version combined with everyone who's involved in this new version that came out retitled Creepin. And same goes with production, a whole list of people for the first and now a whole list of people for the second. If you are familiar with the original, let me know in the comments down below which one you prefer. But otherwise, it's time to give the song a listen, and be sure to stick around after the song for a music theory breakdown, and then we're gonna spread apart the song into different categories and give it an overall score.
Somebody said they saw you.
Nice intro.
The person you were kissing wasn't me, and I would never ask you.
The production already feels sharp.
To myself, I don't wanna know if you're playing me. Keep it on the low. I don't wanna know.
I'm not a very big fan of generic trap beats. It's like, why do you need to do that? But it is a very nice production.
Think about it when I hold you. When looking in your eyes,
And I think The Weeknd was a wise choice to cover a song like this.
Baby, keep it to yourself. I don't wanna know if you're playing.
See, much better. That's all you needed to do. Except this is closer to the original beat than the original song. It just fits way better.
Please don't let it show. Oh, baby, I don't wanna know. Did it touch you better than me? Watch you fall asleep.
Very nice.
That you used to do to me. If you're better off that way. All that I can say, come back to me.
Great ad-libs. And again, very well produced. It's very sharp.
Had me crushing, I was cuffing like the precinct. How you go from housewife to a sneaky link? Got you round in all type of Benzes and Rolls. Girl, you used to ride in the rinky dink. I got a girl, but I still feel alone. If you plan me, that mean my home.
I'm happy they're at least changing up the beat. It's not the same beat over and over.
Can't even
Kinda keeps it
record, you
fresh.
got me out my zone.
I know if you're playing me, keep it on the low. Cause my heart can't take it anymore. And if you're creeping, please don't let it show.
Lovely outro.
If you creepin', just don't let me find out. Get a hotel, never bring them to the house.
If you're better off that way, baby, all that I can say. If you're gonna do your thing, then don't come back to me.
Initial thoughts. What immediately stood out to me from pretty much the start into the finish was absolutely the production. It was better than I expected it to be, and I'm not trying to throw shade at Metro Boomin or 21 Savage or The Weeknd by any means, but you know, the production of current hip hop, at least when compared to hip hop of say the 2000s or the 90s, not to sound like some grumpy old head, but generally speaking, modern hip hop production is known, is notorious, is infamous for just decreasing steadily in quality, and I found that to be a very respectable quality style of production. And again, if you have heard the original song, I Don't Wanna Know, it's really not like this version is a super far cry from that. However, it did give it more of a contemporary feel, it did give it a bit more of a in or hip or in style sound to it. In my opinion, I think the older one will stand the test of time better. I think it'll age better simply because anything that, in my opinion, has some kind of trap beat to it is going to age like milk. Kind of like the way those 80s songs with like the like synthesizer sound. It's like, oh, that's the 80s. The trap beats are going to be the same thing, in my opinion, assuming they eventually go out of style. Either way, I still absolutely have respect for the way they decided to do it. I do think it was tasteful. It wasn't, by any stretch of the imagination, kind of disrespecting the original direction, if you will. But otherwise, I'll save the rest of my many thoughts on the song for when I'm breaking it into various categories and giving it a score. And before I can do that, let's go to the expert's corner for a music theory breakdown to see his take and what he thinks of the song.
Welcome to the Experts Corner. This is Creepin by Metro Boomin, The Weeknd, and 21 Savage. This song's in the time signature of 4/4, and it's in the key of either E major or C sharp minor. The reason for that is there's a concept in music theory called relative major and relative minor, and sometimes it's hard to know which key a song is in. E major is the relative major of C sharp minor. And this song rests a lot on C sharp minor. That seems to be home. So I'm going to say this song's in the key of C sharp minor. Even though someone could say it's in E, and I wouldn't be mad. So the chord progression for this one is pretty darn simple, but it's a little unique. You don't hear it as often as other chord progressions, so it gets points for that. So it starts on C sharp minor, then it goes down to G sharp minor, then it goes up to A major, then it goes to B sus4, then A flat major, then back up here. Overall, that's the main chord progression. It repeats that a lot, and occasionally there are some variations thrown in. I heard this song for the first time today, and I think it's pretty good overall. I enjoyed it. I learned that it's basically a remake of this other song called I Don't Wanna Know. Listen to that one as well. Gotta say, I think I like that one a little more, probably because I'm an old head. The trap beat in this one kind of took some points off for me. I don't think it was needed, and later on in the song they switch it to a much better beat, and I thought that was great. The layers in the song are nice. The vocals are pretty good, a little over-processed, but The Weeknd did a good job. The song flows nicely and the composition is alright. Overall, the song doesn't do much for me, but it is objectively not bad, so I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Back to you, Francis.
A very special thank you to our expert for providing a music theory breakdown and giving the song a healthy and modest 6 out of 10. But the expert score is only 1 out of 6 total categories that we grade the songs by. So without further ado, let's get right to it. Starting out with composition, this song gets a 5.5 out of 10. Reason being, it is pretty middle of the road, which is neither the biggest compliment nor a big insult by any means. It's verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, end. Now that being said, I do really like the melody of the song, even though it wasn't necessarily original, since it is kind of a cover. It's still a very pretty melody. I do like the direction it takes as it begins, a little bit with its outro as well, how it segues to the rapping verses. And yes, as I'm sure our music expert mentioned, because I haven't seen the clips yet, I usually watch those after I record, I'm assuming that he talked about chord progression, and while it probably isn't as basic or simple as like a Taylor Swift song, it's still nothing necessarily complex that would really boost the score for composition. And it's to be expected with the genre of hip hop, whether we're talking 90s, 2000s, 2010s, or current hip hop, unless it's something like Kanye West's Dark Fantasy or Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. Those are more rare instances of when a composition in hip hop hop can be mind-blowing, but generally a song like this is gonna get middle of the road. The reason I'm giving it a 5.5 instead of a 4 or a 5 is because I do like the melody of it. I think it's very pretty, even though structurally it's fairly basic. Moving right along to production, I'm giving the song a 7.5 out of 10. For me, this is probably the strongest aspect of the song as a whole. The intro, while very brief, I thought was very sharp and tastefully done. The outro especially is probably my favorite part, where the production kind of shows off and you hear kind of touches of strings while they're having the Weeknd kind of do his outro singing. And while I'm not a fan of most trap beats in music unless it's done very well, I do appreciate that it wasn't necessarily all that the song had. It wasn't like it was trap beat, trap beat, trap beat the entire time. It's production's job to keep it fresh and keep it from getting redundant. So in this song, I absolutely appreciated breaks from the beat entirely, where there's just nothing, and other instances when it would switch from trap to the more original beat from the original song from 2004. I also really like the mixing of the Weeknd's harmonies during that bridge part of the song, when it's kind of ad-libbing as well with the backing vocals, creating a beautiful sound. So a 7.5 is very strong. It's very healthy when grading out of 10. The reason I'm not giving it an 8 or higher is simply because the production is nothing necessarily crazy artistic. And yes, the trap beat. The reason I have such a thing or such beef with the trap beat is because they're so generic and simple. It takes minimal talent to create one. And so I'm pleased that it's not the only beat the song clung to, but still, I mean, you can do better than that in my opinion. So 7.5, still very good, is fair. Up next we have lyrics, which I'm giving a 5 out of 10, which is exactly middle of the road. Now, in this song's defense, it is basically word for word, aside from the rap verses, the same song as I Don't Wanna Know from 2004, so if I were reviewing that song, I would also be giving it a 5 out of 10, simply because in order to get a 7, an 8, a 9, or even a 10, which I've never given out, it would have to be something absolutely brilliant, something from some of the greatest poetic minds to ever exist, whether we're talking Billy Joel or we're talking Kendrick Lamar or J. Cole, who's just examples of immortal technique in the genre of hip-hop, Nas as well, just brilliant penmanship, right? That would be what that tier of numbers is for. But this song isn't a 1 or 2 or a 3 where it's just absolute crap or mumble rap, right? There are pretty lyrics, they are nice enough. Now, if we're talking about the lyrics later in the song as well, I would also give those a 5. It's not horrible rap, it's not mind-blowingly amazing rap. It rhymes, it's clever, it's smart, but it's not talking about anything profound. I mean, you've got your Benzes and Chanel, or even the Weeknd's part talking about being played or creeping or not wanting to know. Those are fine, very pretty lyrics, but they're very average, normal, kind of predictable, generic lyrics in a sense. They're neither bad, they're neither great, very normal, middle of the road, 5 out of 10. In my opinion, that's fair. Keeping it moving, we have vocals and flow. Now, if this song didn't have any rap verses in it, we would just be grading vocals. Or if this was a song that was entirely hip-hop, we would be grading flow. But the song has both, so we're grading vocals and flow, which I am giving a 6 out of 10. If we're talking specifically about the rap verses in this song, I would give those a 7 out of 10 just because they flow very well. It fits the perfect aesthetic and vibe of the song. If we're talking about the Weeknd's vocals, I'd probably give those a 5 out of 10. Not to say that The Weeknd is a bad singer by any means, he's a fine singer, but for me, subjectively, even though I'm trying to be as objective as possible, The Weeknd isn't the most versatile vocalist. And also, I mean, I'm not gonna say he goes as far as auto-tuning his voice to the point where it's blatant, but in any Weeknd song, you hear the pitch correction, you hear the vocal processing that they put on his voice. And so, you can't really accurately grade vocals if they're, you know, not fake, but kind of computed. So yes, I acknowledge he has a good voice, but he doesn't really do a whole lot with it. It is kind of edited in a way. And in this song specifically, which is what we're grading, his vocals in this song are solid. So if you combine the Weeknd's vocals of a 5 with the flow of the rap verses of a 7, you get a 6 out of 10. Arriving at our final category of originality and or inspiration, I am giving the song a 7 out of 10. Now this is a bit tricky, right? Because it is kind of like a cover. So I could say for originality that it's a 0, but that would be cruel and also not accurate. So I guess for the originality aspect of this, maybe in our heads we can just put NA and just stick with inspiration, because I do think when you're covering a song, even though you didn't make the song yourself, the way you cover it can absolutely and should absolutely be inspired. And in my opinion, this is a very tasteful and inspired cover of the original I Don't Wanna Know. They didn't take it off the rails and make it like a completely different song that you wouldn't recognize, nor did they just take the original song and change the voice to The Weeknd and add a rap verse towards the end. It is a reworked version of the song. It is a different song, but it's similar enough, and I really like as mentioned earlier when talking about production, ways that it could be original, but ways that overall it is an inspired cover that has a more contemporary feel, a more modern feel, a more tasteful feel. The rap verses, in my opinion, fit seamlessly. The bridge of The Weeknd's vocals was a beautiful little addition. And in my opinion, despite what I said about The Weeknd's voice, I do think he was a perfect choice to cover this song. So while no, it is not an original song, and yes, it is a cover, it is an inspired cover. Now, is it the most artistic, reimagined cover of a song ever, which would probably land a 9 or a 10? No, nor is it a cheap knockoff cover that would earn a 1 or a 2. A 7 out of 10 is good, and so that's what it gets. So now it's time, if we add it all up, throw in the expert score and average it out. Creepin by Metro Boomin off his sophomore album Heroes and Villains gets a 6.2 out of 10, which means, in my subjectively objective opinion, that it's not great, it's not bad, but it's pretty good, which is fine because I'm still gonna play it. And as usual, let me know in the comments down below if you prefer the original version, if you prefer the newer version. Am I a monster with an opinion that's way off the mark, or am I right on the money? I believe it was a Drake and 21 Savage review where I was called a colonizer, so let me know if you agree or disagree with me, and of course what this channel should review next. As mentioned, if you'd like to support myself and the work I put into these videos, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support the channel even further, you'll find Music Kingdom's Patreon and other affiliate links in the description below. This has been another edition of Music Kingdom. Thank you so much for listening with me, and I'll look forward to jamming with you in the next one.